Well, hello. Sorry. I mean, I hate to be the person to stand up here and tear you away from the great conversation that you're having at your tables. All good things must come to an end. So before we present the next award, I would be remiss and probably have a difficult time tomorrow if I did not recognize the other members of the Board of Directors of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. So would all of the board members please stand, and let's give them a giant round of applause, please. Thank you. Thank you. The final award we'll present tonight is the Senator William Proxmire Lifetime Achievement Award. The Senator William Proxmire Award recognizes the individual whose life work exemplifies the spirit and work of Senator Proxmire's contributions to economic mobility. Senator Proxmire was the author and lead sponsor of the Community Reinvestment Act. The winner of the, there you go, all right. That deserves an applause as well. The winner of the Proxmire Award this year is a true champion of economic justice. Many of you in this room will know him for his tenacity, his encyclopedic knowledge of CRA, and his relentless pursuit of economic fairness through the use of data. As a matter of fact, he's known for the saying, "Data drives the movement for economic justice." All right. For over a decade, he served as the Vice President of Research and Policy for NCRC. Today, he works for Manna Inc., a local organization here in Washington, D.C., as their development manager. Please welcome to the stage the one and only, the incomparable Josh Silver. Congratulations, Josh.
Thank you. Well, Senator Proxmire, John, NCRC board, NCRC members, I am humbled and honored to receive this award tonight. And I'm also glad I can, at one more NCRC conference, I can say I'm wearing my wedding suit and my wedding tie, because I'm married to two things: my wife and economic justice. But on a more serious note, I want to tell you in a few minutes about why I came to this work. As a Jewish American, I want to tell you what the American dream for Jewish Americans were. On my father's side, there's a story about a pogrom in Eastern Europe. And there's a story my grandmother tells in her book. She wrote some short stories. There's a story about a little girl that was separated from her brother in a pogrom. And for years, the family couldn't find this little girl. And then years later, in the Bronx Jewish Community Literacy Project, my grandmother's relaying the story, and a middle-aged man stands up and says, "That was my mother." So the family was reunited in America. And to me, that's what the American dream is, a place where families can be nourished. But I came to this work of economic justice because all too often, America is a dream deferred. And there is a promissory note that a great civil rights leader was talking about that is unfulfilled in America. And as a young boy, some of you may know this, but most of you don't, I had a speech impediment and a learning disability. And combined a religious minority and a learning disability, you were teased and you were bullied. And that made me predisposed to wanting to help people, taking the anger and the hurt of being oppressed and turning that into the fight for justice. In graduate school at the Lyndon Johnson School of Public Affairs, one of my mentors was Barbara Jordan, and she said that if you experience or see suffering, then you will want to do something for the underdog. So if you don't experience suffering firsthand, I think every American should do national service. Hammer some nails, work in underserved communities. I think this would be a better country if everyone did some national service. In my 20 years at NCRC, we did some very important work, and I'm very proud of the legacy and the work that we did at NCRC. We defended the Community Reinvestment Act from some serious attacks. There are a lot of people that want to repeal and abolish CRA, and we preserved and we strengthened CRA. Data drives the movement for economic justice. I stole that from John Taylor. There's about 5 pages in Dodd-Frank that came from my computer. 5 pages to improve the quality of the small business loan data, so we can see if women entrepreneurs and minority entrepreneurs are receiving loans. Data drives the movement for economic justice. Now, the fight is, there's an agency called the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Dodd-Frank was passed in 2010 with this data requirement. The CFPB still has not written a regulation. We need to knock on the door loudly of the CFPB to ask them to release this publicly available data, and I think we'll see more loans to women and minority-owned small businesses. What's the unfinished agenda, ladies and gentlemen? The unfinished agenda is nothing less and nothing more than the modernization of the Community Reinvestment Act. That would mean, ladies and gentlemen, tens of billions of dollars of more loans, investments, and services in low and moderate income communities and minority communities. Now, we heard the comptroller of the currency say something very dismaying and astonishing. It gets worse every year, saying he's not going to do anything about the geographical areas examined by CRA. If he's not, we will. And there was a large credit card company that recently denied a grant to Manna in a period of 1 week. I'm going to write a comment on a CRA exam, and it has to do with an assessment area issue. Now, as well as trying to get CRA modernized as it applies to banks, we need to get CRA applied to credit unions, mortgage companies, investment banks, insurance companies. We need to make sure that the financial industry has an affirmative obligation to serve all communities and all people fairly and equally and responsibly. Yeah. Now, I may not work at NCRC anymore, but Manna has a saying, Manna never gives up. I will be working hand in hand with you in this movement to make CRA more effective and to modernize the Community Reinvestment Act. And I'm particularly proud of working with the youngsters, the 20 and the 30-year-olds in this movement as they learn how to use and apply CRA and the fair lending laws. People like Elizabeth Risch, people like Jesse Van Tol, be the change that you want to be. In the last 20 years, I have been one of the proudest things for me is to work in a diverse coalition. African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, young people, old people, be the change that you want to be. Manna is likewise a very diverse organization. I think that is very important to have diversity in your life and in your coalition. And I will end on this note. You guys speak truth to power. One of my proudest moments at NCRC was also one of my most uncomfortable moments in NCRC. We had a meeting with Barney Frank. And it was just not a meeting in Barney Frank's office. He had us meet in the room right outside where the House of Representatives make their laws. And it's a very strange place where you have lots of lawmakers milling around, and you have lots of celebrities milling around. I think it was the guy from Law and Order was there that day. So this was right around 2010, just when they were debating Dodd-Frank. And John Taylor had a question for Barney Frank. John Taylor was asking Barney Frank, are you going to do anything to modernize CRA? And Barney Frank is not a very quiet person. And this turned out to be a very heated argument in front of all these lawmakers and celebrities. And although it was one of my most uncomfortable moments, it was one of my proudest moments about the leader that John Taylor is. He does not take no for an answer. Keeps fighting for economic justice. Takes it on the chin. Might take an unpopular stand. There might be some ostracism, being ostracized inside the Beltway. But you know what happens? You know what happens? The people say, don't take that embarrassing stand. You know what happens? A few weeks later, they come back to us and say, you had a good idea. And the most recent example of that was on the reform of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They basically realized that John Taylor and NCRC was right, that you cannot remove an affirmative obligation from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. It is John Taylor's stand and NCRC's stand that we got that back into the conversation. Keep the faith. Now, in parting, I wonder if I can ask you all to join me in song. My wife really has the voice in my family. I'm untrained. She says I actually have a good voice. This little light of mine, I'm gonna make it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna make it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna make it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Yeah. Now, in the America that we all work for and strive for, no little girl is going to get separated from their brother in a pogrom. Instead, the America that we strive for and work for, a father waits for a little girl at the bus stop, holds the little girl's hand and walking up the street. Every house is occupied. There's no foreclosures. The neighborhood is thriving. That's my life. Ladies and gentlemen, let's make it everybody's life. Thank you so much.
Wow, let's hear it for Josh again. Well, we want to congratulate all of the award recipients. And we actually have a few more items lined up, including a surprise video guest. So, would you take a look at the monitors?
Hello. I'd much rather be with you in person today for the National Community Reinvestment Coalition's annual conference, but I'm afraid we're just going to have to settle for video. I do want to start, though, by thanking John Taylor for inviting me to join you today. John, you and I have fought side by side in some really tough fights through the years, and I want to thank you for your outstanding leadership at NCRC. You are truly the best. And also, while I have this chance, I want to congratulate the recipients of the 2015 NCRC National Achievement Awards. Way to go. I am really glad to have this opportunity to speak with you today, at least by video, because I believe that the work you do every day makes a real difference. Across the country, NCRC member organizations are out on the front lines fighting for economic justice. Your efforts to help revitalize our communities, protect individual civil rights, and promote safe, stable, and affordable housing are critical. That's why it's so important that you are here in Washington this week. We got a lot of work to do to build an economy that works for everyone. One area where NCRC's voice has been critical is in pushing for strong, affordable housing goals that will benefit families across the country and help keep homeownership as the centerpiece of the American dream. We're in the midst of an affordable housing crisis, and access to credit for middle and lower income borrowers remains extremely limited, even 7 years after the financial crisis. When I spoke at this conference last year, the members of the Senate Banking Committee were in the middle of a year-long debate about housing finance reform. Now, we weren't able to reach a broad bipartisan agreement, but we participated in nearly a dozen hearings, and we really dug into the details in the course of our negotiations. I came away from that process convinced that we do need comprehensive housing finance reform. Well-designed reforms can better protect taxpayers, can bring private capital back into the market, and can create a stable housing finance system that can weather the ups and the downs of the housing market. Powerfully important goals, but make no mistake, a well-designed housing finance reform will give us an opportunity to address affordable housing crisis that leaves so many struggling for adequate affordable housing. Ultimately, I just couldn't support the bill we debated last year. It took some important steps toward addressing the crisis, but it eliminated Fannie and Freddie's affordable housing goals on day one, and it eliminated the obligation that Fannie and Freddie have to serve the entire primary market. The bill replaced those two assurances with a new market-based incentive fee, which simply could not replace what the housing goals and the duty to serve have done for millions of middle-class families across the country. I hope we have an opportunity to address comprehensive housing finance reform this Congress, and I will continue to do everything I can to help make sure the federal government is adequately addressing our ongoing affordable housing crisis. I'm also very glad to have NCRC as an ally in the fight to push back against efforts to roll back Dodd-Frank and to weaken the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Hard-working families are still paying a heavy price for the decision to weaken the financial cops, leaving Wall Street free to just load up on risks. Congress should not chip away at important reforms that protect taxpayers and make our economy safer. You know, in too many places, in too many cases, the game is rigged in favor of the rich and powerful and rigged against working families. That's why it's critically important for us to make clear what our values are, what kind of a people we are, whether we're going to stand only with those who have already made it, or whether we're going to work to level the playing field and give people a fair shot to get ahead. So, thank you for everything you do on a daily basis to strengthen our communities and to help level the playing field for all our families.